In terms of an agenda today, we're going to go through 6 main topics. The first is ICT projects are unique. The second is a little bit of information about scope management concepts and what that actually means. We're going to go through 2 of the major scope management concepts that have been published, Northern and Southern Scope. We're going to take a look at scope managers. What is a scope manager? Who can be a scope manager? We're also going to talk about making change happen, and then we'll have a summary and conclude with questions. The very first slide you'll see here says Information and Communication Technology ICT projects are unique. ICT is an acronym, a 3-letter acronym that is coined primarily for use in Europe. However, in the United States and Canada, we more commonly call them software-intensive systems. So it could be called SIS, but Information and Communication projects really, truly are unique. What's the definition of an ICT project? Well, if we take a look at the PMBOK, the Project Management Body of Knowledge, it describes what a project is, and we have adapted that to take a look at what is an ICT project. An ICT project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique ICT, in other words, software, product, and or service. Now, one of the key things here is that most customer organizations actually will mislabel a group of work, or a bag of work, I call it, as a project when it's in fact a program under the PMI definition. And a program contains multiple different types of projects, and that's what often gets us into trouble. Let's take a look at engineering and ICT. Now, my background is mechanical engineering, so I often take a look at things like software engineering and think, is it truly software engineering? Well, let's take a look at that and compare truly what happens in these 2 industries. If I'm building a bridge, for example, building a bridge, building a house, building a building, the industry is very mature, absolutely positively. There are building codes. We talk about the pyramids standing for hundreds of years, thousands of years. We talk about bridges standing for hundreds of years. We talk about things within the age of Galileo. If we take a look at ICT, on the other hand, it's relatively young. When we look at a product, think about that engineering product. It's tangible. It's a road or a building. You can touch it. You can feel it. Software is incredibly intangible. And even sometimes the day before, a project team might say, we're just about ready, and you just can't tell if software's ready. From a cost model standpoint, well, we have very standard cost models. If I'm building a road, I'm going to talk about US dollars per kilometer or US dollars per mile. I'll be talking about a building in terms of cost per square meter. What happens in ICT? Well, in some cases, we might have US dollars per source line of code, dollars per hour. Well, that's not really a cost model, but that's all we have. From a metrics point of view, let's take a look at what we have in engineering. We have square meters, we have kilometers, we have square feet, we have squares if you're in Australia. We have a lot of different things, but they are common to both the owner, a homeowner, an owner of a construction project. But in ICT, the users and developers absolutely have different demands for different metrics. What about project? Now, this is an elusive definition, and I'll explain it with an example. In engineering, we have very discrete construction, renovation, upgrade projects. We would say that that is multiple projects. We would never take an example of renovating 2 houses, clearing another lot, putting a brand new house, getting a walkway between those 3 new buildings, or 2 renovated and 1 new building, landscaping, and calling that all one big project. Never. We would say that those are very discrete, separate projects. We would cost them absolutely separately. We may size them separately. And we would never say, oh, the whole project is $1.2 million, and then try and manage it as a single piece. If you had a rainstorm come through for an entire week, I can guarantee that if we said that was one huge project, that the customer would not understand that it's only the landscaping that would have to be foregone for a week. What do we do in ICT? Well, in ICT we have this big, what I call bag of work. It's a hybrid. We often mix R&D and development and conversion and enhancement. Oftentimes it concerns many pieces of software. And for some reason, when users write everything down on the same piece of paper, sometimes they absolutely expect that that is one project. It's not. It's one big program with many different projects, and that's going to be part of what we're going to talk about. Stability and cost. Well, here's another very interesting situation. When you take a look at a building, we'll have some renovations, but the initial capital cost absolutely exceeds the lifetime maintenance. We would never say that we build a house and then over the next 10 years rebuild it 10 times. But in ICT, that's commonplace. We have frequent enhancement and maintenance. Our life cycle maintenance costs absolutely can be as high as 8 to 10 times the capital and acquisition cost of that single piece of software. Okay, let's look at controls and models. In engineering, we have building codes. We have the need for sealed engineering blueprints. I can guarantee you that if I took a napkin sketch of a building into my permits department at my local county office and said, I need a building permit, they would say, no way. And even if I insisted that I need that building permit today based on the napkin sketch because the concrete trucks are arriving tomorrow, there's no way I'd get it. And I can also guarantee that if they threatened to go and talk to my boss, the mayor, you'd still never get a building permit. But what happens in ICT? Well, we do have some regulatory things. We have the U.S. Federal Food and Drug Administration. We have CMM, CMMI. We have the SPICE models. Those are helping us, absolutely. But I can guarantee that based on some sometimes very sketchy requirements, we go in and we start building software. And it's kind of like that old joke where an engineer says, okay, you guys all start coding, and I'll go find out the requirements. That's just not a good way of doing business. Now, if we talk about CMM, CMMI, and SPICE for a moment, that's like really oiling a pipeline. I used to be a pipeline engineer in my first incarnation of a career. And one of the things that we used to do was run what they called a pig through a pipeline. So you've got a pipeline that's just full of gunk and gas and oil, and it's a real mess. And you run a pig or a type of valve-type contraption through the pipeline, and you clean it until it is absolutely clean and glistening as if it's brand new. Now, I can guarantee you that CMM, CMMI, and SPICE does that for our software development processes. We create a very nice, clean pipeline. The problem is, when we put garbage into a clean pipeline, it still comes out as garbage. And that's one of our big issues. ICT project uniqueness. Now, we've talked about the differences. Well, there's some bad news. If you take a look at the chaos report that the Standish Group produces, 1 in 3 projects, according to the 2003 publicly distributed chaos report, was considered a success. Now,